They promoted me to director. That day, coming home from work, I saw my husband, who was usually late, had come back early and prepared a party to celebrate with me. Just after, something unexpected happened that left me pale with terror. A year after our wedding, my life seemed perfect. I'm Charlotte, the only daughter of the chairman of the Hamilton Construction Group, one of the biggest firms in the country. I grew up surrounded by luxury, never wanting for a thing. People said I was lucky, but I always thought the luckiest thing that ever happened to me was meeting and marrying Jack. He didn't come from money, but he had a will of iron, an undeniable talent, and most importantly, he truly loved me. Or so I believed. The company he ran, C&J Projects, even though it had my initials, was actually a wedding gift from my parents to both of us. The legacy my father wanted to entrust to his dear son-in-law. I barely got involved in the business. I dedicated myself body and soul to looking after our little family, to building the home I'd always dreamed of. Life was cruising along nicely, until one fateful Tuesday arvo. Jack told me he had an unexpected business trip to the Gold Coast, a coastal city a few hours' drive from Melbourne, where we lived. He said a partner had called him urgently, and he probably wouldn't be back until the weekend. I was a bit bummed because it canceled our movie plans, but I quickly packed his bag, reminding him to drive safe. He kissed me on the forehead with the same warm smile and gentle look he always had. "You be good at home, love. I'll be back as soon as I can." As his car disappeared down the driveway of our place in Toorak, I felt a strange emptiness in my chest. Our house, normally full of life, suddenly felt cold and lonely. I pottered around the house, doing small chores, but my mind was miles away. Suddenly, I remembered the beach apartment on the Gold Coast that my parents had bought us before the wedding as an investment. We barely ever used it, just lent it to close friends occasionally. It had been a long time since I'd been there, and I had no idea what state it would be in. An idea struck me. What if I went to clean it up a bit, and, while I was at it, gave Jack a surprise? Just imagining the look on his face, a smile crept onto my own. Without another thought, I grabbed my car keys and drove straight to the Gold Coast. 3 hours later, I was standing outside the door of the luxurious apartment on the 25th floor of a building with a direct view of the Pacific Ocean. It all looked the same, quiet and elegant. I put the key in the lock, filled with excitement and anticipation. But as the door creaked open, I froze solid. The inside wasn't empty and silent as I'd imagined. I could hear a soft children's song playing, and a pair of pink women's slippers were neatly placed by the door. My heart started thumping a little faster. Maybe Jack had lent it to some mates and forgotten to tell me. I tried to calm myself with that thought as I gently pushed the door open. Just then, a young woman came out of the bedroom. She was wearing simple pajamas. Her hair was tied up in a messy bun, and her face, though pretty, showed a trace of tiredness. But what left me utterly petrified was the little boy, about a year old, holding a dummy in her arms. When she saw me, she humpied, her eyes showing a mix of surprise and suspicion. "Excuse me, are you looking for someone?" Her voice was clear, but unfamiliar. I stood there like a statue, my mind blank. Who was this woman? Whose baby was this? Why were they in my and my husband's apartment? A million questions swirled in my head, but a voice of reason told me to stay calm. I took a deep breath, trying to force a natural smile, even though my face felt stiff. "Oh, good day. Sorry. Is this apartment 2501? I think I've come to the wrong floor." The young woman looked me up and down, but her inquisitive gaze seemed to soften as she saw my polite and confused look. She nodded. Yeah, this is 2501. Which apartment are you looking for? I can help you. Nah, that's all right. I must have gotten mixed up. So sorry to bother you, I said quickly, and turned to leave. I needed a quiet place to get my head straight. But just as I turned my back, the baby in her arms started to cry. She quickly tried to soothe him. There, my little Oscar. It's okay. Daddy Jack will be here soon, and he's bought lots of presents for you. The words Daddy Jack were a knife straight to my heart. My body went cold. Jack? My Jack? It couldn't be. It must be a coincidence of names. I clung to that fragile hope, but my feet felt glued to the floor, unable to move. I had to know the truth. The instant the name Daddy Jack came out of that woman's mouth, my world stopped. My ears no longer heard the baby's crying, the distant murmur of the waves, or even the hum of the air conditioning in the hallway. All that was left was a deathly silence, an infinite void that was devouring me. I tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence, a common name. But deep down, a cruel voice screamed at me to stop lying to myself. Just then, the phone rang in the pocket of the woman's pajamas. Awkwardly, while cradling the child in one arm, she pulled out her mobile with the other. Seeing the name on the screen, her face instantly relaxed, and a sweet smile appeared. She answered quickly, her tone playful, a stark contrast to her earlier suspicion. Hello, my love. Where are you? I hid behind the wall next to the door, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't leave. An invisible force held me there. I had to listen. I had to know who was on the other end of the line. Oscar and I are waiting for you. He's a bit fussy today. I'm sure he misses his daddy, she said, fussing over the baby. The person on the other end said something, and her smile grew even brighter. Oh, really? Did you buy me that handbag already? The one I sent you a photo of the other day? My God, it costs more than $10,000. You spoil me too much. I love you more than anything in the world. $10,000. That figure was like a bucket of cold water in my face. Jack, the husband who always told me the company was going through a tough time, that we had to save money, that we had to be frugal to set an example for the employees. Jack, the one who refused to buy me a necklace for barely $2,000 for our wedding anniversary, with the excuse that we shouldn't make extravagant purchases right now. And now, he was willing to spend such a massive sum on another woman. On a handbag. My throat felt dry and bitter. I tried to swallow, but it was like I had a knot in my throat. The conversation continued, and every word that came out of her mouth was a deeper cut in my bleeding heart. Yeah, Oscar's being a good boy. Hey, honey, this weekend we're going to check out that new house in the new estate, yeah? A friend told me it's beautiful, that it even has a private pool. Let's buy it so Oscar has a place to play when he's older, okay? Her voice was as sweet as honey, but to me, in that moment, it was more disgusting than anything. She was asking my husband to buy her a house while living in the apartment my parents had bought for me. Yeah, I know you love us more than anyone. Anyway, drive safe, okay? I'm going to hang up. And make you dinner. Kisses. The call ended. The woman went back inside, her face lit up with happiness and satisfaction. The door of 2501 closed, returning silence to the hallway, but unleashing a terrible storm inside me. So it was true, was, no doubt about it. My husband, the man I loved and trusted blindly, had betrayed me. Not only did he have a mistress, but also a child, a 1-year-old baby. That meant he had been cheating on me since we got married, maybe even before. All the words of love, the tender gestures, the promises of a happy future, everything was a perfect facade he had built. A wave of nausea rose from my stomach. I leaned against the wall so I wouldn't fall over. Hot, bitter tears began to stream down my face. What had I done wrong? Wasn't I good enough? Pretty enough? Or didn't I love him enough? Why was he treating me like this? I had given him everything. A career, money, status, and unconditional love. And this was what I got in return. The pain quickly gave way to another feeling, a terrifying coldness and emptiness. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. I just stood there, in the deserted hallway, letting the cruel truth devour my soul. The promises he made to that woman had killed my heart. The tears kept falling, but I didn't make a single sound. Leaning against the cold wall, I felt the chill seep into my skin, just as the terrible truth took over my soul. For a moment, I wanted to burst into that apartment and cause a scene. I wanted to confront Jack, yell in his face, "Why?" to slap that woman for destroying my family. But then, another image appeared in my mind. The image of my parents. My father, who had put all his trust and hope in Jack, giving him the career he'd built his whole life. My mother, who had always loved and treated him like a son. If I made a scene, how much would they suffer? This would become the laughingstock of everyone, and the Hamilton group would be affected too. I couldn't be selfish and only think about my own pain. And then there was Jack. He'd planned everything so perfectly, hiding it from me for so long. Would a person like him easily admit his mistake? Or would he deny everything and even blame me? No, confronting him now was the worst strategy. It would give me momentary satisfaction, but the consequences would be unpredictable. I would lose everything, while he and his mistress could run away with the assets he had been siphoning from the company. Cold logic began to take control. I wiped away my tears and took a deep breath to calm down. The pain was still there, sharp and dull, but on top of it, a steely determination began to form. I wouldn't collapse. I wouldn't let the traitor and his mistress live happily at the expense of my suffering. If they had taken everything from me, I would make them pay it back with interest. Silently, I turned around and got in the lift, trying to maintain a calm expression. As if nothing had happened, I didn't go straight home. Instead, I drove to a quiet cafe near the apartment complex, choosing a corner from which I could watch the main entrance. I ordered a black coffee, no sugar. Its bitterness helped me stay alert. Sitting there, I started to put the pieces together. Jack's increasingly frequent business trips, the calls he always took outside, the unexplained charges on his credit card that he justified as business expenses. All those loose pieces that I hadn't noticed before now fit together to form the perfect, disgusting image of infidelity. He had cheated on me systematically and with a plan. Well, I would use a plan to get back at him. A plan sophisticated and cruel enough to make him pay for everything he had done. About an hour later, I saw Jack's familiar car in the distance, pulling into the building's car park. My heart started thumping again. He got out of the car with a huge bunch of roses in one hand and several luxury brand bags in the other. His face was radiant, full of expectation, an expression I hadn't seen in him for a long time. He had no idea that, from a nearby corner, the wife he was cheating on was watching everything in silence. I raised my phone, zoomed in, and captured that moment. The photo wasn't perfectly sharp, but Jack's figure and the presence he was carrying were clearly recognizable. This would be the first piece of evidence. Seeing him happily walk into the building, I no longer felt pain, but a cold indignation. The plan had begun. From this moment on, I was no longer Charlotte, the naive and devoted wife. I would become someone else, someone calculating, patient, and who knows how to reclaim what's hers. This war, without a doubt, I was going to win. I took a sip of coffee. The bitterness spread in my mouth, but in my mind, everything was clearer than ever. After that day, I went home as if nothing had happened. I remained the sweet and attentive wife. When Jack returned from his business trip, I greeted him with a smile and made him a hot dinner. He didn't notice any difference. He continued to play his role as the loving husband perfectly, telling me how exhausting the trip had been and the difficult contracts he had to negotiate. I listened in silence to every one of his lies, with a growing contempt inside me. The more perfect his performance was, the stronger my determination for revenge became. The first step of my plan was to get close to that woman. I needed to know everything about her relationship with Jack, and most importantly, gather more evidence. But I couldn't show up as Jack's wife. I needed another identity, a perfect cover so she wouldn't suspect a thing. I took almost a week to investigate Lucy. It wasn't too difficult. Through a friend who worked at a phone company, I got her number based on the frequent calls she made to Jack's mobile. From there, I found her social media profiles. Lucy wasn't discreet. She constantly posted photos of her son, expensive gifts, and dinners at fancy restaurants, but always hiding or cropping out the face of the man she was with. As I scrolled through her profile, I saw a life of opulence that was clearly bankrolled, but also a palpable loneliness and a desire to be acknowledged. I discovered her daily routine. In the morning, she'd take the baby for a walk in the nearby park. In the afternoon, she'd go shopping at the supermarket or a shopping center. She didn't seem to have any close friends on the Gold Coast. It was always just her and the baby. This was the weak point I could exploit. I decided to orchestrate a chance meeting. I planned everything meticulously. I chose an elegant but not flashy outfit. I put on some subtle makeup and drove a different car than the one I usually used. I wanted to project the image of a successful, friendly, and approachable woman. One afternoon when rain was forecast, I knew Lucy would be at the supermarket because I saw her post on social media that her fridge was empty. I got there early, parked, and sat in a cafe across the street, waiting patiently. Sure enough, a little while later, Lucy appeared, pushing her baby's pram. I waited until she had been inside the supermarket for about half an hour before making my move. I went to my car, positioned it near the exit, and waited. The rain started to get heavier, just as I had predicted. When Lucy came out, loaded down with bags and struggling to push the pram, the sky opened up and it started pouring. She looked pretty flustered, searching for a place to take cover, while the baby started crying from the sound of the thunder. It was my chance. I drove slowly towards her, rolled down my window, and called out to her. "G'day! What a downpour! Do you need a lift? I can drop you home if it's on my way." Lucy looked up, with a mix of surprise and suspicion. She hesitated. I gave her the most friendly and harmless smile I could. "Don't worry, love. Poor little Bubba's going to get soaked out here. Jump in." Maybe because she saw I was a woman, or because of my soft tone, or maybe just because of the awkward situation, Lucy nodded. I quickly got out, opened the boot, and helped her load her shopping and get the baby into the car seat I had already prepared. All my movements were natural and efficient. "Oh, thank you so much. What a lifesaver," Lucy said once inside, putting a hand to her chest and sighing with relief. "No worries. It's a joy to help others. By the way, my name's Charlotte. And yours?" I said, starting the conversation as I drove. "I'm Lucy, and this is Oscar, my son." "How lovely. Oscar is a beautiful little boy. What an adorable face," I said, looking at the baby in the rearview mirror while feeling a pang of pain. That child looked a lot like Jack. but I quickly suppressed my emotions and kept the smile. The chance meeting had gone off perfectly, just as I had planned. Lucy, without knowing it, had just fallen into the first of my traps. The car glided smoothly under the heavy rain. Outside, the streets were blurry with water, but inside, the atmosphere was warm and dry. I put on some soft instrumental music, trying to create a space as comfortable as possible for Lucy to open up. "Where do you live? I'll drop you off," I asked in a friendly tone, as if we had known each other forever. Lucy gave me the address of the luxury apartment complex that I already knew. During the drive, I skillfully steered the conversation. I started by complaining about how difficult it is to look after kids, even though I don't have any myself. I made up a story about a nephew I adore. I talked about how exhausting it is to look after a baby by yourself. You, alone with little Oscar, must be absolutely knackered, yeah? I only look after my nephew for an afternoon, and I feel like my arms are going to fall off. My comment seemed to strike a chord with Lucy. She sighed, her gaze lost in the rain through the window with a melancholic look. "Well, yeah, it's tiring, but thinking about my son gives me strength. Plus, luckily, my husband loves us so much. He works really hard so that his mom and I want for nothing. That's wonderful. Finding a good husband who adores his wife and son is the best thing that can happen to you. Your husband must be an incredible man," I continued, leading the conversation exactly where I wanted it to go. Hearing my praise for her husband, Lucy's face lit up, unable to hide her pride. She started bragging, and that was exactly what I was waiting for. "He is, yeah. He's a self-made man. C&J Projects is a really well-known company in the industry now, all thanks to him. He told me he named the company after an old friend who's really important to him." I gripped the steering wheel hard, my nails digging into the leather. C&J Projects, the name my father had chosen with all his love for his only daughter, had become, in Lucy's story, the memory of an important old friend. Jack was not only cheating on me emotionally, but he was completely denying my family's effort and sacrifice. He had built up this image of a self-made man to impress his naive mistress. I swallowed my anger and continued my role as an admiring listener. Wow, so he's a genius, good-looking, talented, and he spoils his wife and son. You're a lucky woman. My words made Lucy feel even more satisfied. She started telling me how Jack pampered her, how he bought her super expensive luxury items, and how he had promised that he would soon give them an official status. He told me I just have to wait a bit longer, that as soon as he sorts out some complicated stuff, he'll come get us. He says that Oscar and I are his real family. While Lucy was talking, I discreetly activated the recording function on my phone, which I had placed in the central console. I had adjusted the angle so the microphone would pick up the sound perfectly. Every one of her words was clearly recorded. To make sure, I asked a key question. "Looking at Oscar, I bet he looks a lot like his father, doesn't he? He must be a good-looking fella." Lucy giggled, the happy smile of a woman who feels loved. "Yeah, everyone says he's the spitting image of his dad, especially his nose and mouth," she said, pointing to the features of the baby who was sleeping peacefully. And then, with total nonchalance, she admitted what I already knew, but needed to confirm. Of course, because Oscar is Jack's son. Bingo. The recording was complete. I had irrefutable evidence in my possession, proof of their relationship, proof of the illegitimate child, and proof of Jack's deceit about the company's origin. The car arrived at the building's car park. I helped Lucy with her bags and the baby. Before we said goodbye, I said, "It was so lovely talking to you. I'm new to the Gold Coast too and don't know many people. If you don't mind, we could swap numbers and catch up for a coffee sometime." Lucy was thrilled. It seemed she also needed a friend to vent to. After saving her number, I left. Sitting in the car, I listened to the recording again. Lucy's clear voice resonated, talking about the happiness she thought she had. A happiness built on lies and my pain. But I no longer felt rage. That recording was the first bullet I loaded into the gun of my revenge. From that chance meeting, Lucy and I started talking more frequently. I took the initiative to message her every day, sometimes asking if little Oscar was eating well, other times sending her baby care tips I found online. I played the role of an understanding big sister, a confidant, always ready to listen, and Lucy, just as I had predicted, quickly came to see me as an emotional support. She told me everything, from Jack's promises, to buy her a new car, to the pressure he was getting from his old wife at home. According to her stories, I was a problematic, uncompromising woman, and an obstacle in the way of her true love. Listening to my own story through a third person was ironic, but I listened patiently, offering words of comfort and false empathy. Don't worry, a man as clever as Jack will sort everything out soon. You have to be strong to support him, I'd often tell her. My words of encouragement made her trust me even more. She had no idea that the big sister she trusted was the same old wife she referred to with such disdain. I orchestrated more chance meetings. One day I knew she was taking Oscar to get his shots. I showed up there, pretending to take my nephew for a checkup. We sat together in the waiting room, sharing typical mum worries. Another day, knowing she liked a brand of children's clothes, I bought her several lovely outfits for Oscar, telling her it was a present for my little sister's son. In every meeting, I wore designer clothes, drove luxury cars, none that Jack knew about, and projected the image of a successful, wealthy, and free woman. I wanted to build in Lucy's mind the archetype of the woman she longed to become, a woman who didn't depend on a man to live a queen's life. Little by little, Lucy started treating me like a real sister. She invited me to dinner at her place, introducing Oscar to me as a beloved auntie. Being in my own apartment, watching Lucy prepare dishes, she had probably learned to impress Jack. Watching my husband's son call me Auntie Charlotte, my heart was a whirlwind of emotions. Pain, bitterness, but most of all, a terrifying calm. I was on the right path. This fake friendship was my perfect cover. Not only did it allow me to collect more information about them, but it was also the tool to execute the next steps of my plan. Lucy, with her naivety and gullibility, had become the most important piece on the chessboard I had set up. She didn't know that every confidence, every secret she shared with me, was pushing her and her lover a little closer to the abyss. Sometimes, seeing little Oscar's innocent smile, I felt a pang of remorse. The child wasn't to blame for anything. But then, the memory of Jack's betrayal, of my sleepless nights consumed by pain, extinguished any hint of compassion. I couldn't go soft. If I didn't act first, I and my whole family would be destroyed. I kept telling myself I wasn't doing it just for revenge, but also for self-defense, to protect what was mine. This friendship, though fake, was my sharpest weapon. Once our friendship was solid, and I had Lucy's absolute trust, I began the second phase of my plan, stoking her greed. I knew that for a materialistic and presumptuous woman like her, this would be a fatal blow. I started unintentionally boasting about my luxury life. I talked about my trips around Europe, about limited edition handbags I had to order a year in advance, about exclusive parties with high society. I didn't say directly that I was rich. I simply described my life with a studied nonchalance, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. I was looking at this watch yesterday. I thought it was pretty. "What do you reckon?" I said, showing her a photo on my phone of a watch with embedded diamonds worth a fortune. Lucy's eyes glittered. She praised it with admiration, unable to hide her longing. "Oh my God, it's gorgeous, Charlotte. It must be so expensive. I wish I could have one." I smiled lightly. "Well, it's not a big deal. Women who earn their own money have to know how to treat themselves. We can't always depend on men." My comment was a direct jab at her pride and ambition. I knew she was completely dependent on Jack. Although her life seemed luxurious, she lacked security and autonomy. She started to compare. Why could Charlotte buy these luxuries herself, while she had to ask for them and wait for her lover's generosity? I kept adding fuel to the fire. I invited her shopping, taking her to the most exclusive boutiques, places she probably only looked at from the outside before. I tried on dresses worth thousands of dollars and super expensive shoes with total nonchalance. While the sales assistants fussed over me with exquisite service, I saw Lucy beside me with a mix of admiration and envy in her eyes. "Try on this handbag. It would look great on you," I said, pointing to a crocodile skin bag from the new collection. Its price was around $3,000. Lucy hesitated. "Nah, Charlotte, it's too expensive. I don't dare." "Why not? If you like it, try it on. Men love women who know how to look after themselves and look good. Who knows, maybe Jack will see you with it and buy it for you." My words hit the mark. She put on the handbag. She looked at herself in the mirror with a dreamy expression. And just as I expected, that same night, she sent the photo to Jack and started demanding it. From then on, Lucy's greed became a bottomless pit. She was no longer satisfied with gifts of a few $1,000s. She started demanding much more expensive things from Jack. The luxury watch I had shown her, trips overseas, and the ultimate, the house worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Lucy often complained to me, "Jack's been acting really weird lately, Charlotte. I ask for anything, and he always says to wait, that the company's doing it tough, not like you who has everything you want." I just smiled and comforted her. "I'm sure he has his reasons, but you have to think about yourself and Oscar. You never know what the future holds." My words, full of double meanings, made her more anxious and impatient. She pressured Jack non-stop, putting him under enormous financial strain. He started siphoning large sums of money from the company to please his mistress. And of course, none of those transactions escaped my control. I had long since infiltrated the company with a trustworthy accountant. Every invoice, every receipt for Jack's expenses for Lucy was secretly copied and sent to my email. The evidence was piling up, and the web I had woven was closing in. Jack and Lucy's relationship, built on money, was now cracking precisely because of it. While the conflict between Jack and Lucy was escalating due to financial pressure, I executed the next step: to completely nullify Jack's power at C&J Projects. I needed to turn him from a brilliant CEO into a complete nobody. One morning, I showed up at the office to the surprise of many employees. Before, they rarely saw me there. They only knew me as the boss's wife, a rich lady who lived off her inheritance. Jack was equally surprised to see me in his office. "Love, what are you doing here? There's a lot of work. You should be at home resting." I smiled sweetly at him. "I'm bored at home. Since the company has my name, I thought I'd come to see how people work and learn a bit from you. Can't I?" Jack couldn't find an excuse to say no, and reluctantly agreed. From that day on, I went to the office every day. At first, I just sat in his office, reading documents, reviewing reports, without getting involved in anything. I wanted him to think I was just there to pass the time. After a few weeks, when he had gotten used to my presence, I started making my first forays. "Hey, Are you meeting with Mr. Gascon from the real estate group this Arvo? Can I come with you? I want to learn how you negotiate with clients." Jack hesitated. Mr. Gascon was one of the company's most important partners, but seeing my enthusiastic and innocent expression, he couldn't say no. He probably thought a woman ignorant of business like me would be nothing more than a pretty accessory. It was his fatal mistake. He forgot that I'm the daughter of a construction magnate. From a young age, I accompanied my father to meetings. I heard him analyze the market and negotiation strategies. Business is in my blood. During the meeting, I barely spoke. I listened and observed in silence. But when the negotiation stalled over a price issue, I intervened softly. I didn't talk about numbers. I talked about long-term collaboration, the prestige of my father's Hamilton Group, and the strategic benefits that both parties could build in the future. My words were subtle, but powerful. I reminded Mr. Gascon of the strength behind C&J projects and offered him a broader vision. Mr. Gascon, a business veteran, got the message instantly. He looked at me with new eyes, with a new respect. Finally, the contract was signed under even more favorable conditions than Jack had expected. On the way back, Jack looked at me with a complex expression, happy about the success, but with a shadow of unease. He was starting to realize I wasn't as simple as he thought. I kept my innocent demeanor. "Did I say something I shouldn't have, honey? I just said what I thought." From then on, with the excuse of wanting to learn, I participated in all the important meetings. Little by little, I established close relationships with all his partners. They started to respect me not only for being the chairman's daughter, but for my intelligence, my ability, and my vision. Calls from partners started going directly to my mobile instead of Jack's. New contracts were sent to me first. Jack started to feel sidelined. He lost control. He tried to get it back by meeting with some clients on his own, but without success. To them, I was now the true representative of C&J projects, the one who had the final say. The territory he once proudly dominated was now being invaded and conquered by me, slowly but surely. He was becoming a puppet director in his own company. The pressure from work and Lucy's demands made him increasingly irritable and tired. He could no longer hide his discomfort at seeing me in the office, but he couldn't do anything. Legally, I was the owner. Meanwhile, my friendship with Lucy was strengthening. She saw me as her lifeline, the only place she could vent, not knowing that I was the one indirectly causing all her problems. One Friday night, Lucy called me with an unusually cheerful voice. "Charlotte, come out for a drink with me. I have incredible news to tell you." "What's got you so happy?" I pretended to be curious. "Jack has agreed to buy me the house. He just put down the deposit this Arvo." "I'm so happy." Her voice sang on the other end of the phone. My heart sank. That meant Jack had taken another huge sum from the company. The price of his stupidity was getting higher and higher, but on the outside, I pretended to be happy for her. "Seriously, congrats, Lucy. We have to celebrate big time." We met at a swanky rooftop bar at a hotel. Lucy arrived early. With a stunning red dress and flawless makeup, her face was beaming with triumph. Maybe she thought that, with that house, her position in Jack's heart was secure. We ordered wine. Lucy drank a lot. She was constantly toasting her brilliant future in the new house, to how Jack had promised to divorce me, soon to marry her. I knew it. Jack loves me. How can that old bitter thing he's married to even compare to me? She's old, ugly, and on top of that, infertile. Her words were like a knife twisting in my wound. Jack and I had been trying for a baby for a year with no luck. It was my greatest sadness. And now, my husband's mistress was using it as a weapon to humiliate me. I gripped the glass tightly, holding back my rage. Seeing me silent, Lucy thought I was feeling sorry for her. She leaned in and whispered in my ear, her breath smelling of alcohol and venom. "You know what? Sometimes I wish that bitch would just disappear. If it weren't for her, Jack would be all mine. I'd be the director. I wouldn't have to live in secret." I shuddered at her words. Under that guise of materialistic naivety, there was a cruel, calculating soul. She didn't just want Jack's money. She wanted my position and even my life. Drunk words are sober thoughts, as they say. I realized the true danger that woman represented. She wasn't as simple as I thought. I looked her dead in the eyes, blurry with alcohol, but glittering with jealousy and hatred. I knew I couldn't underestimate my opponent. I pretended to be drunk too, slurring my words. "What are you saying? She's his legal wife. Don't think crazy thoughts." Lucy let out a mocking, twisted laugh. "Legal? So what? She'll be in the past soon. These days, the one who has a man's love and his child is the one who wins." That night, after dropping a completely drunk Lucy off at her place, I sat in my car for a long time. Her words echoed in my ears. Disappear. Her latent malice made me rethink things. My plan needed to be sped up and be much more drastic, because my enemies didn't just want my money. They wanted my life. This was no longer a simple battle for inheritance and honor. It had become a fight for survival. After the rooftop bar conversation, I became extremely cautious. Lucy's words, though said while she was drunk, had deeply unsettled me. I knew Jack and she were capable of anything, and my instinct was right. A week later, Jack's attitude suddenly changed. He became attentive and gentle with me, like in the early days of our courtship. He no longer got annoyed when I went to the office. He even asked me about my work. And, most significantly, he started cooking my favorite dishes for me. "You've been working too hard lately. You've lost weight. I've made this to help you get your strength back," he said, serving me a steaming plate of a special stew, with a look full of affection. If this had been before, I would have been moved to tears. But now, this sudden attention only made me uneasy. A man who has a mistress and a secret child, who is losing power in his company to his wife. Why would he suddenly be so good to her? Something dark was hiding behind it. I pretended to be happy. I praised his cooking skills. But inside, I was on high alert. That night, I ate a little and said I was full. I secretly put the rest of the food in a small container and put it in my handbag. The next day, on my way to work, I stopped at a pet shop and bought a lively little white hamster. I named him Snowball. I took him to my new private office at the company, a room I had asked for to have my own space, away from Jack's supervision. From that day on, every meal Jack made for me, I saved a small portion. I would lie and say I was taking it to the office to eat and save time. And all that food I would give to Snowball. Jack continued with his role as the perfect husband. He prepared delicacies for me, all supposedly nutritious and expensive. He even brought me a bottle of vitamins, saying a friend had brought them from overseas. They were great for women's health. Of course, I didn't take any. I crushed them and mixed them with Snowball's food. The hamster remained healthy and active, running on his wheel. For a moment, I thought maybe I was just being paranoid, that maybe Jack had truly repented. But my gut feeling told me he hadn't. And then, what I feared most happened. One morning, about 2 weeks after buying Snowball, I got to the office and found him dead in his cage, stiff and cold. There were no signs of illness or wounds. My heart stopped. I fell to my knees, looking at his small, lifeless body. It was true. My suspicions had been confirmed in the cruelest way. Jack, my husband, with whom I shared a bed and a life, was trying to poison me. He wanted a slow death, without a trace, that would look like an illness. He was probably using a slow-acting poison so that when I died, everyone would think it was because of my delicate health. A shiver ran down my spine. I no longer recognized the man I had loved. He wasn't just a traitor. He was a monster, a cold-blooded killer. He wanted to kill me so he could be with his mistress and take over my family's entire fortune. Trembling, I took out my phone and took photos of the dead hamster, the food, and the vitamin bottle. They would be proof of his attempt to murder me. The little hamster had sacrificed his life to save mine. I owed him my life, and I swore I would make the person responsible pay a very high price. The rage and fear turned into a visceral hatred. My revenge plan was no longer just about justice. It was about survival. The hamster's death was an unequivocal warning. I couldn't continue living under the same roof as the man who was trying to kill me. Every second beside him was suffocating. His smile, his attentions, everything had become disgusting and terrifying. I had to leave immediately, but I couldn't do it abruptly. It would arouse his suspicions. I needed a plausible excuse. That night, after secretly burying the hamster, I went home looking tired and sad. Jack, as always, greeted me with a lavish dinner. "What's wrong, love? You don't look well," he asked, with his fake concern. I sighed, rubbing my temples. "I don't know. Lately I've been feeling really tired, no appetite. It must be work stress." "I'll take you to the doctor tomorrow," he offered solicitously. "No need. I'm sure I just need some rest." I paused, as if the idea had just come to me. "Hey, do you mind if I go to my parents' place for a few days? I haven't been there in ages. With Mum's care and the country air, maybe I'll recover." Hearing this, a fleeting gleam of joy crossed his eyes. I saw it. He was happy I was leaving. Maybe it would make his plans easier, or just give him freedom to be with his mistress. But he quickly hid his excitement behind a mask of nostalgia. "Of course, my love. Go and rest and get pampered, but I'm going to miss you heaps." "It's only for a few days. I'll be back soon," I said, fighting to keep my voice from trembling with hatred. The plan was accepted more easily than I expected. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay next to him, listening to his steady breathing, imagining how many times he had lain beside me with murderous thoughts. I felt disgusted to share the same air. At midnight, when I was sure he was sound asleep, I got up. Without turning on the light, using only my phone, I opened the wardrobe and took out a small suitcase. I packed only the essentials, some clothes and my most important documents, my ID, the deeds to the properties in my name, the company papers, and, crucially, a savings book with a considerable sum my mother gave me as a dowry. It was my life insurance. I couldn't let it fall into his hands. I did everything in complete silence. The slightest noise, the sound of the zipper, made my heart skip a beat. I was terrified he would wake up. I felt like a fugitive escaping from a sleeping monster. Once ready, I carried the suitcase out of the room with extreme care. I didn't dare look at him. I knew if I did, I wouldn't be able to hold back, and I'd scream. Downstairs, I left a brief note on the table. "Gone to my parents' place. Take care. Love you." The words "love you" made me feel sick, but it was necessary to not raise suspicion. I opened the door stealthily and left. The moment the door of our house closed behind me, I felt as if a weight had been lifted off me. I breathed in the fresh night air, feeling reborn. I drove away from there in the dark. I didn't go to my parents' place. I didn't want to worry them. Instead, I checked into a luxury hotel. It would be my secret base of operations. Sitting in that impersonal room, looking at the city at night, I knew my war was entering a new, more decisive and dangerous phase. But I wasn't scared. That nighttime escape had given me back my freedom, and I would use it to prepare my final counterattack. Over the next few days, I made Jack believe I was at my parents' place. I messaged him and called him daily, keeping my affectionate tone to dispel any suspicion. He seemed delighted with his freedom, not knowing that his every move was under my control. I needed one last piece of evidence, one that would be irrefutable to expose his entire plan. The hamster one was terrifying, but in a trial, he could claim it was a coincidence. I needed something more direct, and Jack's mobile was the Pandora's box that held all his secrets. The problem was how to get it. He was never without it. The opportunity came on a Friday arvo. I called Jack in a weak voice. "Honey, I don't feel too well. Can you come pick me up from my parents' place this arvo? I miss you so much." Jack agreed immediately. He probably thought my break was over and it was time to resume his plan. That arvo, I didn't go to my parents' place, but straight to the office. I went into my private office and waited. I had prepared everything. I asked my trustworthy accountant to prepare some financial reports with serious errors, figures that, if they were real, would cause a disaster in the company. When Jack arrived, I was already in the meeting room with the accountant and the head of sales, both of whom I trusted. I pretended to be frail, with a pale face. "Sorry to make you come so quickly, but some very serious problems have come up in this month's reports. I need you to review and fix them right now." Jack saw the figures, and his face changed. He knew that if those numbers came to light, the company's reputation would be ruined. He threw himself into the work immediately, forgetting about everything else. He sat down, took off his jacket, and left his mobile and keys on the table while he argued with the other two. It was the moment I had been waiting for. While they were focused, I discreetly grabbed his phone and said, "I feel a little dizzy. I'm going to my office to rest for a bit. You guys carry on. Let me know when you're done." No one noticed. I quickly went into my office and locked the door. My heart was pounding. I had about 15 or 20 minutes. I turned on the screen. Password. My mind went blank. What was it? I took a deep breath. Jack was simple. He would use something meaningful. I tried his date of birth. Nothing. Mine. Nothing. Our anniversary. Nope. Time was running out. I started to sweat. Was I going to fail because of a stupid password? I calmed down and thought, what other date was important to him? The image of little Oscar appeared in my mind. Trembling, I entered the date of birth of the child that I had seen on a document Lucy had shown me. The phone unlocked. I was stunned. For him, the birth of his illegitimate son was more important than our wedding. I felt a pang of pain and rage, but I pushed it away. There was no time. I went straight to the messages. What I read was worse than I had imagined. There was a conversation pinned with Lucy. I read it from top to bottom. They weren't just talking about money and houses. They were planning how to get rid of me. "When are you going to get rid of that bitch? I can't wait any longer." Jack, relax, my love. Everything's going according to plan. The poison is working. She's seemed a lot weaker lately. Lucy, I'm scared it's going to take too long. Why don't we do it faster? Jack, we can't. It has to look natural. You don't want them to get suspicious, do you? Be patient. Soon, all that fortune will be ours. I read, trembling. Lucy also knew. What's more, she was the one instigating it. They didn't just want to kill me. They wanted my family's entire fortune. I didn't hesitate anymore. With my own mobile, I took photos of the entire conversation, screen by screen. Each message was proof of their horrible crime. I sent the photos to my email and erased the traces on Jack's phone. Just as I finished, there was a knock on the door. It was him. I locked the phone. I took a deep breath to appear calm and opened it. "Are you guys done already?" "Yeah, It was just a small calculation error. Let's go home." I nodded. In the car on the way back, sitting next to the man who was planning to kill me, I no longer felt scared. I had the definitive proof in my possession. The curtain on the charade was about to fall. With the final piece of evidence in my hands, I knew it was time to end everything. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to act before Jack and Lucy could do anything to me. The following Monday, I got to the office very early. I was wearing a sharp black suit, more makeup than usual, and my hair was in an impeccable bun. I wanted to look powerful and decisive. I called my secretary. "Send a notification to all departments. At 9 o'clock sharp today, there will be an emergency company-wide meeting in the main room. Attendance is mandatory. No exceptions. The reason will be announced at the meeting." The secretary, surprised by my authoritative tone and cold expression, obeyed without a word. The news spread like wildfire, generating all sorts of rumors. No one knew what was going to happen. Jack had just arrived. He came into my office, visibly annoyed. "What are you doing? How do you call a company-wide meeting without consulting me? Is something that important?" I looked up and stared at him, without any emotion. "Yes, something extremely important that affects the survival of this company. Come to the meeting and you'll find out. Oh, and sit in the front row. It's the seat reserved for the CEO." My strange attitude unsettled him, but he didn't ask any more questions. He probably thought it was just another one of my schemes to make things difficult for him at work. They couldn't imagine that what was about to happen was 100,000 times worse. At 9 o'clock, all the employees of C&J Projects were in the meeting room. The tension was palpable. Everyone was looking at the podium, where I was standing. Jack sat in the front row, in the center, still with an air of smugness. He didn't know these would be his last moments in that chair. I let my gaze sweep over the room, pausing for a second on him. I picked up the microphone. My voice sounded clear and firm throughout the room. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your punctuality. I know you're all wondering about the reason for this meeting. I won't waste any more of your time. Today we are here to reveal a truth, a disgusting truth that has been hidden for too long in the heart of our company." Murmurs went through the room. Jack frowned, starting to feel uncomfortable. I signaled to the technician. The big screen behind me lit up. I took a deep breath. It was time. "The truth I want to talk about today concerns our CEO, Mr. Jack Moreno." All eyes were on him. He jumped. His face went pale. He stood up, trying to speak. "Mr. Moreno, I ask that you please sit down. The show has just begun. I recommend you stay and enjoy it until the end." My voice, cold as ice, cut off his attempt. Jack froze and slowly sat back down. The air was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The meeting that would seal his fate had begun. "As you all know," I continued, in a steady but powerful voice, "C&J Projects was founded entirely with my family's capital, as a wedding gift for Jack and me. I trusted him blindly to run it, hoping we would make it grow together, but I was wrong." I clicked the remote. The first image appeared on the screen. It was the photo I had taken of him on the Gold Coast, with the flowers and the luxury bags. "This is a picture of Director Moreno during an urgent business trip to the Gold Coast." A murmur of surprise filled the room. Jack looked at the photo, his face drained of all color. I didn't give him time to react. I clicked the remote again. The screen showed a video, the recording of my conversation with Lucy, edited with photos of her and the baby taken from her social media. Lucy's voice resonated, bragging about her self-made husband, admitting that Jack was the baby's father. "Ladies and gentlemen, this woman and this child are the real reason for Director Moreno's trip. A child who is over a year old. which means our director has been cheating on his wife since the beginning of his marriage. The murmurs turned into an uproar. All the looks of surprise, contempt, and curiosity turned to Jack. He was petrified in his seat, his fists clenched, trembling. But the show wasn't over. I kept projecting. A series of invoices, bank statements, transfers. Huge sums of money siphoned from the company's accounts to buy $10,000 handbags, to put down a deposit on a luxury house, and countless other expenses for his mistress. And this is how Director Moreno uses the company's money. The money earned with the sweat of all of us, to maintain the luxurious life of his mistress and his son. At that moment, the silence was broken. People started talking openly, shaking their heads, whispering insults. The image of the honest and brilliant man that Jack had built was completely shattered. I looked him straight in the eyes, with a sharp gaze. That you cheated on me, that you betrayed me, I could consider a private matter. But that you stole from the company, that you betrayed the trust of my father and all the employees, that is no longer a private matter. I paused to let the information sink in. And then, I delivered the final blow. But all that is nothing compared to the crime he intended to commit. The screen showed the last images, the photo of the dead hamster, the vitamin bottle, and, most terrifyingly, the full transcript of the messages between him and Lucy, planning my poisoning to get my fortune. Attempted murder to steal the inheritance. The words in blood red appeared on the screen like a verdict. The room erupted. Everyone stood up, incredulous. The director they respected was a cold-blooded murderer. Jack seemed to lose it. "No, it's a trap! It's all fake!" he yelled, trying to get to the podium. But the security guards, already briefed, restrained him. I looked at him as he struggled, with absolute coldness. I picked up the microphone again, my voice ringing above the chaos. "From this moment on, in my capacity as chairman of the board of directors of C&J Projects, I declare Mr. Jack Moreno terminated from all his positions. Security, get this man out of here. The law will take care of the rest." The curtain had fallen. They dragged Jack away, humiliated in front of the entire company. I remained at the podium, watching the back of the man who was once my husband walk away. I felt no satisfaction, only a freezing emptiness. It was all over. After they took Jack away, I ordered all the locks on the director's office to be changed and his computer and documents to be sealed. I knew the war wasn't completely over. There was still Lucy and the legal battles. Just as I expected, an hour later, my phone rang. An unknown number. I knew who it was. I answered calmly. On the other end, a shrill voice full of hatred. It was Lucy. "Bitch, what did you do to Jack? You're a harpy, you set him up." I let her vent. I could imagine her contorted face. Jack had probably called her to tell her his version, where he was the victim and I was the villain. When she finished screaming, I spoke with a calm that disarmed her. "Hello, Lucy. I see you already know everything. Instead of calling me to insult me, why don't you ask your lover what he did? Don't act all innocent. Jack loves me. He did everything for us. You're just an old infertile woman who couldn't keep her husband and now resorts to dirty tricks." The word infertile hurt me again. But this time I didn't feel pain, just pity for her ignorance. "Lucy, do you know that C&J Projects, the company you bragged about so much, is actually the dowry my parents gave me? Do you know that the apartment you live in, the car you drive, and the luxuries you enjoy were all paid for with my money?" On the other end, silence. My words must have shocked her. I continued. My voice was soft, but every word was a stab. "Do you really think Jack loved you? He only wanted my money and used my money to buy your cheap love. What you two had was nothing more than a transaction. You sold your body, and he used his wife's money to buy himself satisfaction and an heir. You're lying. Her voice trembled. Am I lying? Ask him if without my money, he could have bought you a $10,000 handbag or a luxury house, or if he would still be an ordinary employee with a mediocre salary. Do you love Jack? Or do you love the life of luxury he painted for you with someone else's money? I could hear her sobbing. The harsh reality was tearing her apart. And one more thing, Lucy. Do you know that I am Charlotte, your big sister and confidant? My last sentence was the final bomb. I heard a noise of something breaking on the other end. She had probably dropped the phone. Silence. I knew she was in complete shock. The person she trusted most, the one she had told all her secrets to, was her worst enemy. After a long while, her trembling voice came back. Why? Why did you do it? I should be asking you that. Why did you do this to me? I replied coldly. I just took back what's mine. Goodbye. I hung up, without giving her a chance to say anything else. The confrontation was over. I had put all my cards on the table. I knew that after that call, the relationship between Jack and Lucy would shatter. A love built on lies and money cannot survive truth and poverty. Immediately after firing Jack, I contacted the best lawyer I knew, an old friend of my father's. I laid out the entire case to him and gave him all the evidence: photos, recordings, messages, bank statements, and the toxicology report I had ordered after Snowball's death. The lawyer, after reviewing everything, told me he had never seen a case with such overwhelming evidence. The victory was 100% certain. The divorce petition was filed in court. In it, I alleged infidelity with a child, embezzlement, and conspiracy to attempt to murder me, all backed by a dossier of irrefutable evidence. Jack tried to contact me, begging and threatening, but I ignored him. To me, that man was dead. The trial was quick. Jack's lawyer could barely mount a defense against the avalanche of evidence. Jack denied everything, said it was all fabricated, until the recording of Lucy was played and the poison report was presented. He broke down. The court delivered the verdict. Divorce granted. Jack being the guilty party, he would not only receive nothing from my family's fortune, including the company, but the marital assets were divided very unfavorably for him. The house we lived in belonged to my parents. He had to leave it. The car belonged to the company. The shares of C&J projects, of course, were mine. The only thing he got from our marriage was $25,000, half of our shared savings. Compared to what he had had, it was an insulting pittance. He left the courtroom like a ghost, having aged 10 years. He had lost everything: career, honor, money, family. It was the price of his greed and betrayal. When I heard the verdict, I felt no euphoria, only a deep relief. The nightmare was over. I left the courtroom and looked at the blue sky. A chapter of my life had closed. A new one was beginning. A path I would walk alone. But I wasn't scared. I knew I was strong enough to start over. After the trial, Jack became a nobody. With $25,000, he could barely afford to rent a small flat and start from scratch. Worse still, with his reputation stained by the scandal, no company wanted to hire him. Without money or status, he could no longer fund Lucy's luxurious life. The promised house vanished, just like the handbags and gifts. Their great love faced the harsh test of economic reality, and it didn't pass. Lucy, in shock, turned all her frustration and rage on him. She blamed him for her misfortune. Their arguments became an everyday thing. "You're useless. Where's the house, the car, my status? Look at me, living in this dump," she'd yell at him. Jack, sunk in his own misery, no longer had any patience. "Shut up! If it weren't for your greed, I wouldn't be like this. Of course I care about money. Wasn't it with money that you seduced me? Now that you have nothing, you blame me, you coward." They tormented each other, bringing up all their flaws. The love they had preached turned out to be more fragile than cheap porcelain. It shattered. Finally, Lucy left him, taking Oscar and a part of the little money Jack had left. He sank completely. He had lost his wife, his career, and now, the woman he had risked everything for. He took refuge in alcohol and in a repentance that was now useless. Lucy's life wasn't easy either. Alone, with no income, struggling to raise her son, her hatred for Jack transferred to me. In her simple mind, I was to blame for her suffering. If it weren't for me, she would still be a queen. That resentment grew into a crazed idea. I knew she wouldn't leave me alone, so I hired private security. My gut told me the danger wasn't over. And it wasn't wrong. One night, coming home from work on a quiet road on the outskirts, a taxi started following us aggressively, trying to force us off the road. My driver, an experienced man, kept his cool. Suddenly, the taxi overtook us and cut us off, forcing us to stop. The door opened and Lucy got out. She looked terrible, gaunt, with bloodshot eyes. She seemed to have lost her mind. "Charlotte, get out of there, you bitch! It's all your fault! Today you die!" I stayed in the car, my heart pounding but maintaining my composure. I motioned to my team not to act rashly. Lucy, in a fit of madness, struggled with the taxi driver, stole the steering wheel, put her foot down, and aimed the car straight at us. It all happened so fast. But my driver, trained for these situations, reacted instantly, reversing and dodging the direct impact. The taxi, out of control, crashed violently into a tree. The noise was deafening. My bodyguard immediately called the police and an ambulance. I was still shaking in the car. If I hadn't been prepared, if my driver hadn't been so quick, I wouldn't be alive. Hatred had turned Lucy into a monster. The police arrived. They got Lucy out of the car, injured, but alive. As they took her away, she didn't stop yelling my name and cursing me. Her failed attempt at murder was the end of her freedom. Hatred didn't give her back anything she lost. On the contrary, it took away her future too. Lucy's attempted murder, with such clear evidence, turned my divorce case into a serious criminal matter. I gave the police all the evidence I had collected about Jack and Lucy's conspiracy. They summoned Jack. Faced with the evidence, especially the messages in the toxicology report, he broke down and confessed everything. The plan to slowly poison me and take my fortune. The trial was public. I was there as the victim, seeing the two of them in the dock, the man who was once my husband and the woman who was my friend. I no longer felt hatred, just pity. Their greed and wickedness had destroyed their own lives. Lucy was sentenced to 20 years in prison for attempted murder with aggravating circumstances. Upon hearing the sentence, she collapsed, crying uncontrollably. It was too late to repent. Jack was sentenced to 7 years in jail for conspiracy to commit serious assault for vile reasons. Although he didn't manage to kill me, his intention and methods were punished. Justice had been served. The cycle of hatred and revenge could finally be closed. I watched them leave the courthouse, escorted away. Two people who, for money and ambition, had lost everything. I left and felt at peace. My war was over. It won, not with the satisfaction of revenge, but with the strength of justice. A year after the trial, I received a request from Jack. He wanted to see me one last time before he was transferred to another prison. After some hesitation, I agreed. I needed to close that chapter forever. I visited him in jail. The man behind the glass wasn't the elegant director I remembered. He was gaunt, with premature gray hair and a face etched with regret. He barely dared to look at me. "I'm sorry, Charlotte," he said through the phone. "I know it's late, but I'm truly sorry. I was blind with ambition. I'm sorry for all the harm I caused you." I listened in silence. His words no longer affected me. "You don't have to apologize to me, but to yourself. Try to be a good person when you get out. It's the only thing you can do." We fell silent. There was nothing more to say. I stood up. "Well, I'm going. Take care." I turned and walked away, without looking back. That brief meeting was the final full stop. Jack was now just a name in my past, a very expensive lesson that life had taught me. After all that, I poured my energy into work. I took over as the sole director of C&J projects. With my father's knowledge and my own experience, the company not only survived the scandal, but prospered. I was no longer the rich kid or the devoted wife. I was an independent businesswoman and the owner of my own destiny. Years later, C&J Projects is a leader in its industry. I've bought some of my father's shares in the Hamilton Group, making me one of the main shareholders. I've proven to everyone and myself that I can succeed on my own merit. Sometimes I hear news. Jack got out of prison on good behavior and works a regular job in another city. Lucy is still in prison. I have forgiven them, not because they deserve it, but because I deserve peace. Resentment is too heavy a burden to carry. One Sunday Arvo, from the balcony of my new penthouse, I look out at the lit-up city. I'm alone, but I don't feel lonely. I have my career, my friends, a full and free life. The painful past forged me into the woman I am today, stronger, more resilient, and above all, more capable of loving myself. From the ashes of betrayal, I have been reborn, like a phoenix. My new life has only just begun. If this story of poetic justice had you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Charlotte walked across that beach, carrying the envelope that would destroy everything Jack valued. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more jaw-dropping stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.